You know that feeling where you click, or tap depending on what platform you're watching from, on the final episode of your new very favorite show that you've binged in like 2 days, and that sad, empty feeling you get as the credits start to scroll and the screen is engulfed in a sea of black and white letters. You're happy that these characters had a good, or sad that these characters had a bad ending. I don't know what you're watching. You just can't help but think to yourself, even if they were to, say, run the show into the ground, similar to The Simpsons or Family Guy, I still would have been there. I would honestly much rather these characters be stuck in a state of weird purgatory forever, giving me new episodes to watch every week than be free.
Yeah, really separates your men from the boys.
Why is every piece of media getting a reboot right now? I'm not paraphrasing. I mean everything. Wizards of Waverly Place got one, How I Met Your Mother turned into How I Met Your Father, iCarly got one, there was just a Victorious reboot announced, there's a Scrubs reboot in the works. What's going on? These days, Star Wars even feels like a reboot of itself despite never officially gaining a reboot. However, we could probably just consider it a reboot ever since Disney bought it anyways. This was all a dream. This never happened. Except The Mandalorian.
Where can I go?
Hell, even the Bible received 2 reboots, and no one can agree on which version's the best. All I'm saying is that nothing is sacred. I mean, haven't these characters been through enough quirky adventures for the sake of my entertainment? Take, for example, the show Victorious, because that's the most recent example of a show being rebooted that I can take count of right now. This show is about the Hollywood Arts High School, and in particular follows 7.5 students. We have Tori, Trina, Andre, Robbie, Jade, Kat, and Beck. Even intended for a younger audience, this show had such a witty sense of humor to it, especially despite some awful things happening at Nickelodeon at the time. Much like iCarly, if you go back and rewatch Victorious, you'll still find yourself laughing more than most things that come out on TV today.
My eyebrows are gone! No, they're not! I told you they're right here!
So out of the 7 core characters in the show Victorious, in the reboot, returning will be Robbie, Trina, Jade, and a bunch of random new actors filling in for the rest of the characters. Tori won't even be in Victorious. And furthermore, well, on that note, now you have to have a character named Vicus. Good job. Real ones know that back in the day, we only watched the show for Tori, Kat, Jade, or Andre sometimes. Now the lead role is gonna be what? Robbie and his puppet Rex? I know being a puppeteer is a legitimate thing, and I'm not talking about that. I'm specifically referring to this one isolated instance of me not wanting to watch Robbie play with Rex as an adult. That was a perfectly crafted bit in the original show when my frontal lobe hadn't even started cooking yet. Now it's about 75% done, and it doesn't like that idea. And also, after the show ended, Andre went on to be a moderately successful rapper anyways. Am I in any way saying that the original showrunners won't put on a good show on this show? No. But what I am saying is it kind of feels like they're being set up for failure, being on a reboot with most of the characters being replaced, and one of which is gonna be named Gen Z. The original actors were incredibly talented, especially for acting at the age that they were, so they could have only gotten better. They've done great in their own endeavors. Most notably, Beck's actor was in the show 56 Days, and a few years back, he also played Leon Kennedy in a Resident Evil remake, and it wasn't his fault that the movie sucked. The movie just sucked. However, I haven't even mentioned the deeper implications of Dan Schneider directly profiting off of all of the reboots coming out of Nickelodeon these days. Or maybe this is just me, but the incredibly uncomfortable feeling you get while watching Sam and Freddy from iCarly, 2 characters that in my mind are still kind of engraved as children from when I watched them, hanging out with each other in the sex way. iCarly was such a great and arguably the most iconic show on Nickelodeon. You can load up any episode from back in the day on Paramount Plus and just laugh at
My
it.
loaf of bread is just about done. I'm just gonna give it a few more minutes.
And then I typed :P.
That means she stuck her tongue out.
I know all about :P.
It kind of catches you by surprise, the way that the writers must have been thinking, yes, iCarly, an IP that withstands the test of time. Let's do it again, but make it actually the worst thing to ever exist on this planet. And hey, if you're anything like me and you grew up in the early 2000s, this guy in particular was born in 2001, 2 months before something bad happened. Over time, you probably memorized not only the iCarly theme song, but probably Victorious and Drake and Josh as well. Well, of course, they rebooted it since then, so you probably remembered the original iCarly theme song, and it's the same song. Same audio file and everything. They just took out Freddy counting down for some reason. Freddy forgot how to count. It's perfectly fine if the iCarly reboot is your cup of tea. However, it's not funny, except for Spencer.
I own a falcon named Jericho.
Back when the iCarly reboot was released, I watched it and I hated it. And since then, with there being 3 seasons, I learned that it's relatively well received now, and that's perfectly fine. It's just that the reboot of iCarly, along with any other reboot, feels off. Carly and Freddy are doing iCarly solo now, because Jeanette McCurdy, Sam's actor, has a soul, and a lot of Nickelodeon trauma. And Carly has Freddy producing the show, but Carly just goes live on TikTok. That's all she does. What do you think you're doing? Carly could do this alone, dude. Freddy's just there because he's an original part of the cast. And honestly, looking at Freddy now versus back then, it's like a weird fever dream. Oh, also, my favorite episode of iCarly is the iPsycho episode where they get kidnapped. The girl that kidnapped them back then is just like a reoccurring cartoony villain now and doesn't actually do anything. This show is funny every time Spencer's on screen and it shows his ass at one point, but other than that, when you're watching it, it just feels like you're watching something you shouldn't be. It feels like an overproduced fever dream with camera quality that, by the way, is for some reason better than it should be because it makes the show look like a McDonald's plastic toy. So I ask again, who are these reboots for in the first place? Myself and millions of other early 2000s kids that are gonna watch it for a week and say, I know that character. I recognize that thing and that thing and that thing. And then after a week, they're gonna drop the show because these shows weren't made for longevity or to run for as long as the originals did. They only make these shows to attract an audience, to point out the things that they recognize, and then it just gets dropped after a week. I mean, that 90s show, the sequel series reboot of that 70s show, was canceled after 2 seasons, the first of which only had 10 episodes. And the reason that this show was canceled in the first place was low view counts directly linked to a lack of original cast cameos. And the producers of that 90s show are also looking for other platforms to pick up their show. I say let it die, because the problem that I've noticed time and time again with reboots is that they'll introduce new characters to basically fill in the spots of old characters, and they're nowhere near as likable or funny. Take, for example, the Wizards of Waverly Place reboot called Beyond Wizards of Waverly Place that I made a video about last year. It was a bad video, and I took it down. The original cast is grown up now and has children, and their children are basically supposed to fulfill the original characters' roles. So we have this kid trying to pretend to act like Justin, or this kid over here trying to pretend to be like Alex. Except every line that would come out of one of these kids' mouths, I would just immediately think, you're not delivering it the same way at all, and it's completely fine, and you should want them to put on their own performance, but they're being set up for failure as childhood actors when the producers want to recreate some form of nostalgia and put these kids in the place of the original actors. They want them to act the same, but that's not their style of acting. So it just completely doesn't compute, and it falls apart, and the show gets canceled again. I'm just gonna watch the show, and the novelty's gonna wear off, and I'm gonna leave. Like my dad did. Please come back. Come back, Dad. I dare you. It just feels like recently when a reboot is pitched, it's like a bunch of old dudes sit at a table in a room and one raises their hand and suggests rebooting a show, and they all cheer in unison saying, that's a great idea. People love that IP. And then execute the idea like my grandmother was to right now create a reboot for a show. She's dead. That being said, I'm gonna list some ground rules for this video. Only if a show ended a certain length of time ago will I consider a spin-off to be a reboot. For example, Sam and Cat came out right after iCarly and Victorious ended, and the writing was pretty decent, so it didn't really feel like a reboot. However, in the case of Victorious or iCarly, How I Met Your Mother, or various Scooby-Doo spin-offs that I'm gonna talk about in this video, the original series have been long gone, and at this point, it's okay to call it a reboot. Rule number 2, the show is safe for me talking about it in this video if it's a complete reimagination, like the Wednesday show or Sabrina. because it's not necessarily a reboot, and those two shows in particular are working with dead IPs anyways. Rebooting a show is oftentimes favored to leverage built-in nostalgia towards the IP, securing an instant, already pre-dedicated fan base rather than taking numerous marketing risks for something just a flop. Why would I ever risk my money on an original, unproven IP? Now, if you excuse me, I'm gonna go watch Fast and the Furious 82. That's why you can tune in to just about any Scooby-Doo movie. Sorry. Scooby-Doo that comes out these days, and it's honestly just as decent as the original ones you might have watched as a kid. Well, most Scooby-Doo movies and shows.
Ruin it for me by being strange.
Like we lost them. I can't believe they were gonna throw this out.
Not on my watch. Guys, what's going on?
Whoa, sorry to stop you for a second. I have a question. Who are these people? What is happening? Who Rick and mortified the Scooby-Doo characters? This is a Cartoon Network show called Be Cool Scooby-Doo that came out slightly after my time when I stopped watching Cartoon Network. It's kind of like if Teen Titans Go had a baby with Scooby-Doo, and Rick and Morty was also there. And these characters are absolutely not the characters we all know and love. These are complete rebooted rewrites of the originals. But like, whoever wrote the jokes for this show needs to stay in this industry. This is one of those weird cases where it is nothing but disrespectful towards the original IP that it's taking from, but it like kind of works in a way if you smoke a lot of weed. The whole purpose of the show is just to be funny. This show is just purely comedy for the sake of brain rot. This could have easily been its own IP, and it probably would have gotten the attention of some people, but it makes a lot more sense to use the IP that people are already attached to, so they just slapped Scooby-Doo on there and made the characters look the same as any Scooby-Doo character. Another example of a god-awful reboot that did just about everything wrong is the Velma show. Oh my god, I don't even want to talk about this show. I'd rather do anything else than watch this show. This show does nothing but just change and disrespect the original IP that it's writing off of, and unlike the previous one we talked about, they don't even have the gotta be funny. They try to be witty with their writing, but they just kind of make Velma seem like an asshole.
A bitch. You almost killed me. Guess I didn't try hard.
In the original Scooby-Doo, Fred was kind of a team player, but in this one, he's also just an asshole that cheats on his girlfriend Daphne, and also Daphne's an asshole. And the worst thing of all, they changed Shaggy's sense of humor. He's not even funny anymore. Oh, and also, if you didn't notice, Shaggy's black now. Props to you for not seeing color. There's an overall tonal shift between Scooby-Doo and this. I mean, Velma in original Scooby-Doo was just like super chill and shy, and in this one, she makes insane choices like twerking covered in blood. Joke about controversial topic.
I'm a suspect? I thought lesbians were good at solving crimes. It's like
Because that's how edgy we are. Stopped having a panic attack just by being kissed. Now, I can hear people saying already that it just isn't fair to compare Velma, a show made now, to a legendary IP like Scooby-Doo that has had such an established story and base for such a long time. But you're kind of inviting criticism and comparison when you make a reboot of the show like this, right? And aside from it generally just being unfunny, the main gripe people had with the show was just the fact that the writing was so weird, and it felt like they took Scooby-Doo and cut it into pieces and just stitched it back together randomly. For example, the CW show Supernatural has an episode with original Scooby-Doo characters and animation in it, but they're in a real murder situation, and it's way more entertaining to watch. I would watch an entire show of this. But hey, they're gonna make the reboot as long as they have someone there to point out the thing that they recognize, and then it'll get a 4.5 on IMDb out of 10. An actual decent reboot worth watching is Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated. This show ran from 2010 to 2013, and oh my god, it has such a tightly knit plot you would not think that it's a kid's cartoon. Many people that grew up in this time know this as the official Scooby-Doo series, and it avoids questions that get raised by newer movies like, what came first, Scooby-Doo or the Scooby Snack? Because that question actually makes no sense to me, and it's so paradoxical that I'm just gonna implode into a black hole. Mystery Inc. spanned across 52 episodes with an overarching story, while each episode having its own Monster of the Week style storytelling. This show may as well be Breaking Bad. because Freddy's off his fucking gourd. Also, Shaggy's real name is Norville Rogers. Now, as far as the case of The Walking Dead goes, they had no idea how to write an ending for that show. How can you close out a story that's been running for 10 plus years and give all of these characters that you've given so much personality a good ending when the world is still trash? Not only that, but with the zombies actively evolving to be harder and harder to fight. Oh, and another problem that's happening, the writing being bad since season 5, that's not good either. However, they didn't even need to give the show an ending, because they split it up into 3 different spin-offs instead. I would directly call this a spin-off. It's still a reason for the writing just to have gotten lazy and for them to keep pushing out nostalgia-based content. So rather than giving us a satisfying ending to the show that we've spent multiple years watching, they just kind of say, yeah, that's it of that one, you know, just there's 3 more to watch, you know, why stop now? This Call of Duty style of milking an IP for all that it's worth until there's nothing left but the little bit of nostalgia from when you started watching it years ago is why I included this bit into the video in the first place. The longest running gag among people that watch How I Met Your Mother is usually, what show are they gonna make next? How I Met Your Father? Now that'd be a stupid idea for a show. They would never do that. Yeah, they did. They made that. The show is obviously much like its original counterpart, How I Met Your Father, listed as a comedy on Hulu, yet it will not make you laugh. This show will not make you laugh, let alone snicker, chuckle, chortle, cackle, guffaw. However, you may do that thing where you slightly breathe out of your nose because it's like a little bit funny, but not funny enough for you to release a full laugh, so you're just like a little. It's like a little funny. The whole show is just Ted telling his children the story of how he met his mother. The whole show is Ted Mosby telling his children the story of how he met their mother. And to simplify it even more, it's just him and his group of friends in their regular life in New York City in their 20s. I gotta say, not only do people hate the ending of this show and not consider it to be canon, but this show's not even perfect. It just has everything that I want in a show, and it's a show that I grew up with. It has super meta, relatable, self-aware comedy that I resonate with.
Hey! Bravo, shit, nicely done. Is that my dad?
Some scenes make me laugh, the storytelling of other scenes makes me cry, and the soundtrack to this show is weirdly good. It just holds a lot of magic for me. The character Marshall Erickson as a whole, I just feel like I am him. Barney is honestly really funny, yet kind of a bad person, and you really root for him becoming a better character, and they slowly develop him becoming a better person throughout the course of the entire show, mainly starting at like season 3, and by the end of the show, he progresses a lot. Ted, the main character, is also apparently such a helpless romantic, yet slept with 64 girls over the course of the show, I counted. This show also came out in such a specific time in media where censorship was getting to be on the rise, so a scene where they may smoke a joint or something, they later on replace with them eating a sandwich. Or there's an honestly disgusting scene where Marshall's changing his kid's diaper and he shits all over him and they replace it with confetti. These small limitations forced the writers out of their comfort zones and made them accidentally create something more magical than they intended. I just related so much with the characters in How I Met Your Mother, and in How I Met Your Father, they just straight up have them abuse pills for some reason.
You want a Xanax?
The best excuse that I could think of was that when the writers created How I Met Your Father, there were a lot of weed references in it, and maybe that they think that pills are their modern day weed. But I've got to say, the modern day weed is just weed. It's a more modern day adaptation of How I Met Your Mother, where Hilary Duff is telling her son how she met his father. And instead of creating something original, they just made all the new characters the original characters again. Sophie is Ted. She's a helpless romantic looking for love in New York City. Valentina is just her best friend and roommate, Marshall Erickson. Ellen has the same cartooniness as Lily. Charlie's the token foreign of the group and makes it his entire personality. Jesse is Barney Stinson with his dim outlook on love. And then there's Sid, who I ran out of characters. He's Ranjit. This show was destined to fail from the start, with the writers failing to get this show on air since 2014 when How I Met Your Mother ended. And the writing for How I Met Your Mother had already been stale for like 3 seasons at that point. I will say the characters aren't particularly unlikable in this new show. It's just that they're boring, and I've already seen this for like 8 seasons. And I mean, what can you expect when the How I Met Your Mother writers are like 70 continuity at this point. No characters act funny or make decisions that I personally would even relate with. They try to recreate some of that randomness that's in How I Met Your Mother by making the main character run into somebody in an Uber and just become best friends with them after the first episode, because that's what they did with Robin. They do, however, get points by moving into the original apartment from the first show. I thought that was a decently smart idea. And then it all falls flat when anybody says anything and you're supposed to laugh because there's a laugh track happening, but you don't.
My phone's belly is hungry. She's all, feed me, mama.
Shut your fucking mouth!
And meanwhile, going to How I Met Your Mother, they have the ability to make you laugh without saying a word.
And so I dedicate this show to my grandmother's memory. Now, please join me in honoring her with 60 seconds of absolute silence.
In the end, it does just come down to us and the media that we choose to consume, because they'll make smarter choices as to the content that they create based on what we, the consumers, will watch. They're gonna keep pumping out this lazy nostalgia bait if we keep watching and biting onto the lazy nostalgia bait. Now, anyways, I've been yapping for 2 hours and 12 minutes, and I'm starting to say words wrong. Bye!